Hi, this is Ben Lesage, and this is the Canadian Ruck.
All right, and welcome back to the Canadian Ruck. This is Jamie Gray, your host. As you guessed there, we've got Ben Lesage coming up a little bit later on in the show. Have a great conversation with Ben. He's 16 caps with Canada, just young. He's only 24, but he's an up-and-comer with the Canadian side for sure. He's a member of the 2019 Rugby World Cup team. He debuted for Canada back in 2016 against Romania at the age of 20. Rugged center for Canada, and he's currently playing with the Toronto Arrows in Major League Rugby. So we're looking forward to his conversation, and we're looking forward to many stellar years of rugby from Ben as as the years continue. As always, got a little plug here for us. Contact us on the Twitter, the Instagram, Facebook, and email. We're all over there. Twitter's at Canadian Ruck, Instagram's _Canadian_Ruck, Facebook at the Canadian Ruck, and our email is the CanadianRuck@gmail.com. The most important thing, though, is, yes, I love getting the retweets. I love getting the feedback. All that stuff's great. But I think what needs to happen more frequently is when you're retweeting things, tag somebody in it, tag a couple of your mates in it so that they're listening to these great rugby stories. Direct them to Spotify or iTunes or Google Podcasts or Castbox or what have you, so your friends can listen. Or if it's a rainy night or whatever, and you want to watch the interview on YouTube, direct them to YouTube. We're all over the place, and the more often that you can help me getting these great stories out from our great Canadian athletes and a few internationals, the better it is for the game in our country. If you forget where to go, if your buddy's asking where do I listen to these, just direct them to our website, thecanadianruck.weebly.com. Everything's there. There's links to the YouTube. There's links to the Spotify. There's links to contacting me, etc. There's a topic there. There's a page there with our swag. And if you're on YouTube right now, you can see a nice picture of our swag, or you can take a look right here. I'm holding up our Canadian Ruck toque. Beautiful, $25. Shipping is extra if you live relatively local to me, not a big deal. But if you're overseas or out west, I'd be happy to ship them to you, but we'll have to work out some type of arrangement for the shipping costs. And I'm all about getting those hats out to you. It's winter's coming. Keep those ears and those bald heads like mine warm. Orders going in soon. I'm going to drop some cash to get them sent in, and then we'll go from there and start handing them out. In rugby news, there's been lots going on. Local news, I don't even know if it's local, but definitely local in the sense that it's Canadian. There's a ton of Canadian women playing Premier 15s over in Europe. And thanks to Paco, former guest Karen Paquin, for putting this out on social media quite a lot. But there's no place to watch these games. TSN, I know you're listening. I know you listen to these pods all the time. Make sure that you're getting some of these games out, because it's some stellar rugby over there. And we actually have Mackenzie Thomas. She's a guest coming up soon. She plays for the Darlington Moden Park Sharks. Actually, I believe she's their captain. And they played on the weekend, or they're playing this upcoming weekend. And also just found out that Sophie de Goody, a past guest of ours, has signed with the London Saracens. And she actually just touched down in London, and she's getting ready to get geared up for her first professional contract. So congrats, Sophie, as well. And we'd really love to be able to have a chance to watch these games. So TSN, throw some rugby up, throw some of these Premier 15 women's games on. It would do great service for rugby in Canada if you could do that. And we'll break it down a little bit more local. So if you're from the Maritimes and Nova Scotia in particular, this was awesome. Nova Scotia held their first full 15s-a-side match on the weekend. It was River Lake versus the Tars, happened in Bedford, which is just outside Halifax. And by all accounts, everybody, all members that were there, players, fans, abided by Rugby Canada guidelines. And then they've also followed Nova Scotia health protocol, so contact tracing information, COVID screening, things like that. And the Tars won in what was deemed an excellent match, so good on them. And past guest Jack Hanratty, who's works for Rugby Nova Scotia, he stated, "It's been a lot of hard work by the community, by our clubs, and I just want to congratulate the efforts of all clubs in Nova Scotia." But it was really led, the first club that did all their protocols, all the return to play, was River Lake RFC. And it was fitting that today, River Lake get to kick us off again. So thanks for that quote, Jack, and congrats to the Tires in River Lake for getting that match underway and making that happen during COVID, and congrats to the Tires on the win. On the international side, Rugby Championship is underway, which is, I think, aside from the World Cup, my favorite contest to watch. Just beautiful rugby that's played. Australia and the All Blacks played on the weekend. I believe there was upwards of 30,000 fans in attendance in Wellington, New Zealand. Wellington is COVID-free right now, and I believe, I'm just going by memory, I'm pretty sure all of New Zealand's COVID-free at the moment, but I could be wrong there. Teams played to a rare draw, 16 all. Great match. If you haven't watched it yet and you've got it on the PVR, I apologize for reading the score, but make sure you watch it. It's a stellar, dandy game. Keeping in touch with the Rugby Championship, South Africa still hasn't decided. They're on the verge of pulling out of this year's contest. As of today, I'm recording this section Monday, the 12th. It's about 2 o'clock here Atlantic time, and they still haven't decided if they're going or not. They said they're going to put the report in by the end of this week if they will be playing or not. And a lot of people are saying that they're citing player welfare, and that's the root of the delay. And beyond that, so beyond them having not even decided if they're going, there's a lot of people that are actually concerned that the whole tournament might get canceled if South Africa pull the plug. And that leads to our gray area of the week, and it's a simple one. Should the Rugby Championship carry on even if the Springboks pull out? Simple question. Me, I believe it should continue. I definitely would love to have the reigning World Cup champs in play. I love watching South Africa. I love their style. Big, strong, fast. Like they've kind of got everything the rugby team needs. But it's still high-quality internationals with New Zealand, Australia, and Argentina in the mix. And as most of you know, or hopefully you all know, prior to Argentina going, it was just the Tri-Nations. And it would be similar to what the Tri-Nations used to be before Argentina joined. So this is going to be up on social media. It'll be on Twitter, it'll be on Instagram, it'll be on Facebook. And what I would like is I want you to answer the question, should the Rugby Championship carry on even if South Africa pulled out? So it's hypothetical. There's no guarantee this will happen, but this is what some experts are predicting will happen. If you answer, your name's going to go in a draw, and you're going to win you could have the potential of winning a Canadian Ruck toque, and the toque's on me and the shipping's on me, even if you're in Japan or if you're in England or if you're in South Africa, wherever you are, even if you're in, Sussex, New Brunswick, which is a half an hour drive, the hat and the shipping are on me if your name's drawn. So get your make sure that you're responding to those polls and get yourself answering, and make sure I'm hearing what you're saying, because I want the Rugby World Championship to continue. I want South Africa to be there, but if they can't, I want those games to keep happening. That's it for the gray area, and coming up next, stay tuned, because we have Ben Lesage. All right, so we'll jump right in here. Ben, welcome to the Canadian Ruck. It's a pleasure to have you on. Up and coming Rugby Canada superstar, playing with the Toronto Arrows. Ben, welcome to the Canadian Ruck.
Thanks, Jamie. Listened to a bunch of your episodes over the summer, and happy to join the esteemed kind of company that you've had on. So it's a great idea, and happy to be involved.
That's awesome. Thanks, Ben. I appreciate that. So we're going to jump right in here. So you grew up in Calgary, out in Alberta. How did you get started in rugby? Like, my understanding, you were at like a hockey-centered school, so there, a lot of hockey, but you started playing, and it's kind of developed, and now you're early mid-20s, and you're still going. Talk to us about your pathway there.
Yeah, so I'm lucky. Rugby kind of runs in the blood a little bit, so to speak. So my father played, my grandfather played. My grandfather actually was one of the founding members of the Barrie Rugby Club here in Ontario.
Cool.
So it goes back a few generations, and so I grew up watching my dad play. He was playing old boys rugby until as long as he could, and so I grew up going to his games. And so I think I was 8 or 9 was when I first started playing touch, and he threw me right into it. So definitely a bit more not the most popular or common sport in Alberta, and most people don't get into it until high school. So being able to start so young and being one of the few is definitely probably a little advantageous for me, and set me on the right path. So that was the reason there. Yeah.
Well, starting that young, it is rare in Canada to have 8 and 9-year-olds, but we're seeing it with grassroots programs. But you would have taken advantage of that 15 plus years ago. So that's I guess great that you had that bloodline in your family to get you started. So you started in high school. Where did you go from there? Did you go into a university? Like, what was your development area?
Yeah, so I kind of just worked my way up through the Alberta ranks, so to speak. So played U14, played U16. I actually have a funny story. I ended up playing U16 Saskatchewan for a year after getting cut from Alberta.
How'd that
But
happen?
well, they just nationals were in Calgary and they needed some extra bodies on the Saskatchewan team, so I got called up. So then played U18 Alberta, and then once I graduated high school, chose UBC, and that was a mix of reasons, both athletic and academic. And UBC, to be honest, at the time had been down to UVic for the past number of years, and UVic was the huge program, but UBC was up and coming, and so I chose UBC because of rugby, but primarily because of academics, and thought I would play rugby for fun on the side while I was there. So that's kind of how it took off, and from there, there's just one opportunity after the next, and next thing you know, I'm trying to play full time. So it kind of took off pretty quickly once I reached university, but through the grassroots, it was just pretty natural progression through the provincial ranks.
It's a good start, and it's really cool about rugby. You might not see that in many other sports where you're from Alberta, but you get to play with Saskatchewan at a provincial level tournament, right? So that's
Yeah.
kind of one of those things that rugby. If you have the players, or if you need some players, then here's somebody that can help you out. I love that about rugby.
No, absolutely, and you see that with touring sides who come in from anywhere, and there's billeting, and if they need an extra body, you don't hesitate to jump on the other team. There's definitely a lot more fluidity between the teams and back and forth, which definitely lends well to the sport, and I think fits in right with the culture. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
All right, so more current times, more modern times. Last year in Japan, you cracked Canada's roster. Talk to us a little bit about maybe what it was like on that massive stage of the World Cup. What was the experience like for you personally? Um, did you have like personal expectations and goals, and were you able to meet them?
Yeah, so it was a long time coming for me, so to speak. So when I was U18, I believe, yeah, I went on an Alberta Sevens tour to Japan actually, and that was just after they had announced that there'd be a 2019 World Cup. So that would have been maybe 2011, maybe or 2012 roughly. And so that was 7 years away, and there's distant thought in my head that, oh, wouldn't it be cool to be back 7 years from now playing at that World Cup or whatever, but didn't really put too much thought into it. It was just kind of a passing thought at the time or whatever. And to be honest, it wasn't really until probably 2018 where that really started to become something that I thought was a possibility and a reality for me. And so I think going to a World Cup was, I mean, it's on the bucket list of things to do, and you think about what you want to accomplish in a rugby career. So that was definitely something I wanted to accomplish, and was mindful that there's some incredible players around me and in front of me, and in the back line and different positions with an incredible amount of experience. So definitely didn't take it for granted, and definitely didn't think that it was going to be a shoe in for whatever reason, but ended up, like you said, being named to the team, which was a huge accomplishment, personally, both for my family as well. Like I said, meant a lot to my family. I think to see that after having played rugby for so long, they were the first ones to, I'm sure, to book their tickets to Japan, and make sure that they would be there to take it all in. And so, yeah, it was an incredible feeling both to make it and then to show up in Japan. Just the level of the tournament, the hospitality, just the number of eyes on the World Cup, I guess, is just even beyond what I expected, and just incredible. And so, the facilities, the attention and the care that you're given was next level, and kind of like nothing I've ever experienced before, to be honest. And so it was incredible just to be there and experience it. And I mean, my personal goals there was to play as much rugby as possible, 80 minutes in every game, was to prove to both myself and to others that I can compete with some of those best teams in the world. And I mean, with the teams that were in our pool with South Africa and New Zealand, you really have the opportunity to
Not an easy task.
to compete against probably some of the best players at your position in the world, right? And so, um, my World Cup was cut a little bit short, obviously, with I broke my hand in the first game against Italy, so only got to get the one game under my belt. But I think fortunate and appreciative to even have been there in the first place, to have gotten one game there, and has fueled my fire a little bit more to get back to the next one. France 2023 circled on the calendar, and we'll be doing everything I can to be there personally, but also to make sure that Canada qualifies and gets there as a team. So
So, yeah, France 2023, you're only going to be 27?
yeah,
Is
that's
that right?
correct.
So, if there's talks that USA and possibly Canada are going to try and put a bid in for 2027, you'll still be ripe. You'll still be 31, right? You still could play a couple more World Cups. Um, like you said, you only got to play in one match. You broke your hand. What about that experience, from the one game and from being there? What can you take from that to help you with when you guys go to France?
Um, I think there's a few things, to be honest. One, I think you there's, I don't want to call it sticker shock, but I definitely think there is that moment of being like, wow, this is a World Cup, and you could tell for myself, and we had a number of guys who it was the first World Cup, and you're kind of walking around with your eyes open, whereas there's a number of other guys on the team, and then there's even DTH at his fourth one, right, where this is just a regular rugby game. They're used to the environment, right? So I think learning to understand what to expect in terms of the environment, and France itself is a rugby mad nation as well, right? So it won't be any different, so to speak. So I think just taking the learnings of knowing what to expect, I think is a big thing. Being able to pass that on, I think we're going to have a lot of turnover. Probably you've seen a number of important players from our team retire. Um, who knows, like, who's going to be around for that next one? So having as many players with that experience, and then be able to pass that kind of knowledge on to those next players who are up and coming, I think is important, just in terms of consistency and bringing the team together and stuff. So I think that's the really big part. And yeah, to be honest, like, haven't thought it even for a second beyond to 2027 or whatever. I think it'd be amazing if Canada and US were able to host, and would be incredible to play a World Cup on home soil. But sort of one World Cup at a time, and focus on making the next one before anything beyond that.
That's fair, and it's out of your hands anyway, right? But it's
For sure.
nice to dream a little bit too, I guess.
No, absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
So we're talking a little bit about it right now. Like, you're young in your rugby career, and you're talking a little bit about your aspirations with the national team. You're focusing on that 2023. Is there anything else that you're focusing? I know you've got a November camp coming up here soon with the national team. What are you doing, I guess, to stay ready for that camp?
So you're right. We It's been kind of up in the air for a little while. We're wondering whether we might be able to sneak a couple November internationals in. Would have been nice in that test window. Unfortunately, won't be the case. But definitely think it's good that we will have an opportunity to come together as a team, just kind of connect with the coaching staff, check in, all those sorts of things. And so um, I've been training. Lucky enough, I'm still here in Toronto right now. Actually, I stayed here for the off season, have a good setup, and kind of felt like it was a good place for me for the off season. And so the arrows that we have been training, as of a few weeks ago, we were actually targeting a potential couple exhibition games. I think that's made its way out there but at this point, which they didn't come to fruition, but
Oh,
we were training as if that could be the case. And so have been playing rugby, touching a rugby ball, trying to get into shape. And so now having that November camp uh, as like a committed sort of timeline to be ready for is a huge help. Like, been training all summer, but when there's kind of just this what if or who knows off in the distance, it's harder to wrap your mind around a concept, versus when you're like, all right, here's my deadline, here's when I have to get fit for, here's some actual rugby to play, which is super exciting. So I mean, speaking for myself, but also the rest of the guys who I've been in contact with, like, everyone's just ready to be in a camp environment again, ready to play rugby again, get back to some sense of normalcy, and definitely training hard, so that come camp time, yeah, we're kind of diving right into it, and and able to kind of prove our invitation was worthy.
Absolutely. Yes. Cole Keith was talking about, he said he's been working out 5-6 days a week, but he said you get a little bored because you're by yourself. And here on the East Coast, he's really the only one around. So
Yeah.
he's definitely looking forward to getting out there with you guys.
Well, that's an underrated part is even just lifting with a team, right? Like I'm lucky my two roommates, Jamie McKenzie and Dan Moore, they both play arrows as well. And so able to do some kind of backyard, back alley workouts together and feed off of each other. But it is when you walk into the weight room, like I had training earlier tonight, and there's actually music going and there's a bunch of players and there's a trainer. It's just, you're so much more motivated. You're so much more into it. And I think you get a lot more out of it as well. So definitely sympathetic to what Cole's going through.
He's a big boy. He can handle it.
Exactly.
So what are your goals with the Toronto Aries? Like what's your experience like playing there for the Arrows?
Oh, it's been incredible, to be honest. I've played the one season, right? So I joined them last year. Um, Albeit, so I've played 5 games with them. I haven't gone through a whole season, and that's part of what I'm looking forward to next year. Is I haven't played a home game yet in Toronto, and so even before signing in Toronto for the first time, I spoke to a lot of the players about their experience in the previous years, and all had great things to say about both the city, the team, the ownership, especially. Bill Webb is incredible. And then so to come in and experience it myself, and they weren't just pumping the team's tires just to get me here. It actually all worked out, and so I love the city. The training environment and the facilities are great. Have a really great coaching staff who put together what I think are like pretty interesting and kind of forward thinking game plans and patterns. And so I was really enjoying my time, albeit just the 5 games into the season. So I think coming back next year, it'll be a big focus. I think personally, it'll be exciting to play a home game in Toronto, knock on wood, and be able to experience that home crowd at Landport, which everyone talks about. I think it'd be exciting for me to string 16 games together in a row. Hopefully, I've played UBC and then was jumping back and forth to Canada from there, and so I've never actually really played a full professional season. So it's exciting for me to think about, each week you're kind of improving. And when you're in that high performance environment, I think you really feed off of it. And to sort of be in that environment for so long, I think it'd be really beneficial and pay dividends for myself as a player to be able to do that week in, week out and apply my craft. And then obviously the goal as a team and as a whole would be to win the Shield. We thought we were off to a good start this year, hit a little bit of a road bump in Colorado, but think we can really compete with anyone, even the teams with some big marquee signings and big names. And so we like being the underdog, the scrappy team who's just a bunch of Canadians who play good rugby. And I think be exciting to kind of prove that once again next year and hopefully make a long playoff run.
It's excellent here in the East Coast being able to watch those games, especially now that TSN picked it up last year.
Amazing, yeah.
Yeah, it was really impressive to watch, and just the progression of the league itself over the last few years. Um, the league itself, it's nice to see that happening in North America. Like it's needed. What are your thoughts? Like, where can the MLR help Rugby Canada or even Rugby USA?
Yeah, the short answer is the kind of consistent high level of rugby. What I wouldn't say struggled with per se, because what I was able to make it work, but for that period, I got my first cap in 2016, and then through the end of 2019, essentially, basically until the World Cup, I was going to university in parallel with my tours with the national team. And so I would be playing UBC club rugby, which granted, like, especially in my earlier years, UBC is actually like a very good rugby school. There's good coaches there. There's a ton of great players. And so it is a good environment in itself to learn and better yourself as a player. And I think that's probably why I grew so much early in my UBC years and was able to make the jump. But you're going from UBC training twice a week to Canada camp where you're training twice a day, 7 days a week, going up against full-time professionals who do this for a living, right? And so similar to what I said, I think it'd usually be by week 3 or by week 4 where I finally started my rhythm, where I was noticing myself getting better, and all of a sudden I'm a much better rugby player 4 weeks after I started, and then tour's over, I go back to school, and then that kind of drops off a bit, right? And so I think just the ability to be able to train week in, week out to make a living playing rugby um, goes a really long way, and you can just compound those learnings beyond 4 weeks to 8 weeks, 16 weeks, probably 20, and then you hit ARC firing next summer, you hit November tour firing. I think you're just able to maintain that high level of rugby for a lot longer, and so that's going to be huge for Canadian rugby. That's going to be huge for American rugby, and I mean, hopefully we start to see those results on the pitch sooner rather than later, but I'm confident that they'll come at some point.
Yeah, I agree. It's just that being in that atmosphere, as you said, I think that's hugely important to both of our countries for, I guess, success.
Yeah.
Um, you, when did you graduate from university?
Spring of 2019. So I'm kind of a year and a half out of the university right now.
So spring of 2019, you're at
Yeah,
UBC. A few months later, why don't you come to Japan with us? Like, h- to play, you're playing a university sport. It's very challenging while doing your degree. And then a few months later, you have your convocation, people are off in the business world and whatnot. And I'm going to go to Japan instead for, 6 weeks or whatnot. How was that? Like, how did that transpire? Like, were the guys on your club, like, or people in your class, were they cheering you on? Like, what was happening there?
yeah. I mean, so I studied engineering, so it's definitely gotten a few weird looks from the rest of my classmates,
Engineering,
and
engineering's easy. You could do that while playing rugby, hockey, football, everything,
exactly,
right?
exactly. So it's definitely getting a few weird looks from them, and I would say probably the majority of them had no interest in athletics, and so they they probably thought it was what I was doing was interesting, but paid no attention. And so yeah, I was kind of off doing my own thing. And yeah, after graduation, we've clearly gone very separate ways, myself and most of my fellow graduates. But I think in general, actually, uh, at UBC, I mean, named to the World Cup team was also Andrew Coe, and then Theo Sauter came in as well.
Right.
So those were guys I played with for 3 4 years while at UBC. So I mean, when you talk about the UBC rugby program, it wasn't incredibly foreign, an incredibly foreign idea for them to be sending a player. And so I competed in the 2019 ARCs with Canada, was going back and forth from school there, was back for a couple months. So they were kind of, I would say, used to it at that point, and definitely were huge fans of all three of us, and all the kind of UBC guys who were in the mix and in the running there. And so yeah, kind of, I guess you look back on it, and maybe they must have thought like, oh, this is kind of cool, but didn't seem too crazy. And so I graduated, like you said, walked the stage, and then I ended up moving to Victoria early because I had nothing else going on. The rest of everyone else was obviously competing in the MLR. I had decided to just finish my school that year, and so I was able to go out to Victoria 4 or 6 weeks before most of the other guys showed up, and just get into the gym and just get grinding. So I was able to get into like incredible shape, and by the time that July camp came around, I was probably in the best shape that I've been in, and was feeling really good. And so that route ended up working out really well for me.
That's awesome. And I'm a teacher, so as a teacher, I really appreciate the fact that you went and finished your degree and you took care of that stuff because rugby, it's finite, right? You're going to finish at some point. And you need to have
For
something to
sure.
do, and you've got your engineering degree, or you might choose to do something after instead of engineering, but you have something to fall back on. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. It's not an easy degree to get, so good for you.
Yeah, no, I'm a big proponent of getting the education done and out of the way. And I figured if I'd have left it halfway, it would have been 10 times harder to go back and try and finish it at
Yeah.
whatever point in the future. And so definitely had a few struggles, and was doubting myself or second guessing my decision once or twice along the way. But looking back now, I think I absolutely made the right decision, and it worked out well for me. So
Yeah, I believe so too. All right, so let's jump back a little bit to high school. So you attended a hockey specific school, right? Did
yeah,
you have to convince your coach to allow you to play, like your hockey coach to allow you to play rugby? Like, was there any issues around that? Or was he like, yeah, go ahead, that's awesome? Or,
it wasn't too much of an issue, and I mean primarily, I guess East Coast would probably be in the same boat, but rugby season in Alberta was
short?
maybe, yeah, April if you're lucky, May till August, so to speak. And so that was when I wasn't in high school or going to school anyways. And so they kind of actually matched up really well with themselves. So in the school season, I was playing hockey, was learning how I started in grade 7 at the hockey school. And so that's where they actually introduced us to weightlifting. Hey, this is what you're supposed to do in the gym. This is what a gym program looks like. And so that actually, I mean, that helps you play any sport, not just hockey, right? Just learning how to take care of your body and put on muscle the right way. And so I think that was a big foundational learning, and also just the work ethic that goes with balancing school and athletics at that level. And so I think there's definitely a few learnings that were broader than just hockey specific. And it just so it worked out that I'd play hockey all year, and then come rugby season, I was in good shape just based on the hockey, and put me in good position for rugby season. And then similarly, when school came back around in September, I was probably a bit more active than most of the guys over the summer, and then was able to kind of hit the ground running. So I think it was probably the opposite. The coaches would have liked to encourage more of the guys to play rugby or pick something up over the summer, just to, like I said, kind of maintain that fitness and that athletic pursuit, so to speak.
So it sounds like playing both helped you. So what was it a positive? Did you saw it as a positive?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I think some people, the direct skills in hockey are probably less transferable to rugby. You see some people basketball to football. Oh, there's some direct box out. Like there's direct learnings. I think hockey and rugby are probably a little bit further apart. Maybe the physicality of it as well. Um, but in general, just I think definitely helped me. Like I said, learn to get in the weight room, learn how to condition myself, all those things. Definitely helped my rugby career for sure. Didn't hurt it.
Excellent. All right. So Ben, we're going to jump to a section called Quick Fire, and you've listened to a few pods by the sounds of it, so you probably know what's coming up. But it's just a chance for the listeners to get a better sense of you as a person and your personality. So
Sure.
I've got about 20 here, and
Okay,
they're not meant to make you think too hard, but you might have to. So we'll jump right in if you're ready to go.
let's do it.
All right. Question one: best team you ever faced?
Maori All Blacks.
Good choice. Best player you ever faced?
When we played against Claremont as like a Canada A in France, I lined up against Wesley Fofana at 13, and then also had the briefest stint on wing in my career and lined up against Aliverti Raka, who was on the French World Cup team this year. So both of those guys had a bit of a field day with me that day, if I'm being honest. So
Maybe. But how did you get lined up on wing for a few minutes?
just experimenting. I think the coach was like, "Hey, can Ben play wing?" And after 10 minutes lined up against Raka, I think the answer was probably not. And so I haven't played any wing since then.
You
Maybe,
tried, though. You tried.
yeah, something to work on though. I would like to be able to say that I could play the wing at some point. So
Okay.
future work ons.
All right. Toughest player ever faced. And when I say toughest, I mean the guy. If you're on wing or wherever, you look up and he's running at you with the ball full speed, and you're like, "All right, I hope he trips before he gets to me."
Uh, Probably we played Fiji in November 2016. I think it
All
was.
all 15
And
starters maybe from Fiji.
yeah, so I mean, Josh Tuisova was on that one, and that he was just a human wrecking ball. So that was probably one of the hardest runners. If I'm thinking about who I wouldn't want to have tackled,
Did you tackle him?
I think I did. I actually remember he made a line break down the line, and I was like sprinting, put my head down, caught up to him, closed my eyes, tackled him out of bounds, and thought thought I'd made this incredible play, and when I opened my eyes, he'd gotten an offload and they'd scored under the post. So didn't quite work out, but I got there. So
Yeah, that's good. You tracked him down. Best match you were ever a part of?
top of my head, I'd probably say there's been some UBC UVic games that are just incredibly competitive. They're incredibly fiery. There's the boot, that's what they call the game, the boot between the two teams, and just both teams take it so seriously. And there's a few that I played in that were just like, they're actually incredible rugby. The standards and 1 or 2 point decisions that usually worked out in UBC's favor. So I remember them a little bit more memorably.
That's fair. All right. What's your favorite rugby tradition?
Uh, Favorite rugby tradition, I'll just go with I like doing the tunnel after the game, the handshake. I don't know why. I think it's unique, but yeah, let's go with that.
I like that one. Camaraderie and respect. I like that.
Yeah.
Who's the best team you've ever played with?
I mean, probably the World Cup Canadian side.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fair. What's your rugby nickname?
Funnily enough, my rugby nickname is Benny Big Balls.
Want to explain? Or is
I'll
it just say it?
elaborate. No. There is a story behind it, and so on my very first tour, well, actually, I guess second tour with the team, I didn't have a cap yet, and we were at the Guinness factory doing a tour. We had a game against Ireland, and we were posing for a team photo. And again, I was this like fresh new guy to the environment, kind of just whittling my way around, and without any intention to do so. And I can say that perfectly honestly. I kind of look up and I was not even in the center of the photo, but fairly center. And I mean, if there's one thing, I think that it goes beyond rugby, but if you're like the rookie, the young guy, you should be in the back corner. You shouldn't
Yeah.
be front and center. And so maybe I was middle row, like a few over from the middle. And so Evan Olmstead figures out, like, gives me a look. He's like, "What are you doing in here?" And he's like, "You got big balls on you to think you belong in the middle of the photo." And for whatever reason, that stuck. And so Benny Big Balls has lived on to this day, to be honest.
That's a good one. I like that one. That's good. All right. Who's the player that you love to smash the most?
Oh,
Evan Olmstead after that comment, or
yeah, probably. I'm trying to think. It probably would be a player. I think maybe Lucas Rumble. I'll go with Lucas Rumble. Just he's a teammate, obviously,
yeah,
but he just like puts his head down and he'll take any, like he's a human kind of like the opposite. Well, I wouldn't, without offending him. He like a punching bag. Like he'll take whatever beating. You know what I mean? Like you see him on the field, get run over here, run over there, but he makes every tackle. And he's the best sport about it. You couldn't find a more positive guy, a more upbeat. So it's kind of funny if you get a good shot on him, and he'll compliment you, say, "Hey, nice shot, well done." So feel even better about yourself after.
it's nice. Any rugby superstitions?
None, to be honest. I try my best not to have to fall into any sort of routine or whatever. So none
Okay.
really.
This is a new one. I haven't asked anybody yet. You're the first
All
guinea
right.
pig. Canada East versus Canada West. Who would win?
Well, you know my answer already. It has to be Canada
East, right?
West.
Oh, what?
Canada West. There's no way I'd pick against myself. But to be honest, I've seen those kind of rosters that have been posted in Cole Keith's idea that he circulated, and I do think it'd be a competitive game. I think it'd be fun for both players and spectators and some bragging rights. So hopefully at some point it'd be nice to see that match happen. And it
Maybe.
worked out well in New Zealand with the North and South. So
Yeah.
love to rip that idea off of them.
Maybe Kingsley will set something up in November there while you guys are out in British Columbia for your camp.
Yeah, we'll have to get in his ear.
That's right. All right. 3 to take golfing. Could be anybody. It could be rugby players. It could be anybody you want, live or dead. Who would you take?
Golfing. I think I'd take Tiger Woods 100%. I think have to have one of the best ever golfers to join your tee time would be pretty interesting. I would take Um, oh, there's such a long list of people that you could take. I think someone who I find like super interesting and from as like a businessman and a sports owner, I think Mark Cuban is interesting, and he's got
Hey,
opinions on so many different things in the world. So I think maybe Mark Cuban would be interesting to bring along.
maybe in fun. I could see him and Tiger butting heads, though. I feel like they would argue a lot every hole.
Yeah, that could be an interesting dynamic. We'll have
That's
to see
true.
who shares buggies with each other, and then I'll throw Dan Moore in as a third, just so that I'm not the worst golfer out of the four of us, and he would enjoy the conversation as well, I'm sure. So
That's smart. All right, what's the most used app on your phone?
most used app on my phone. That's a good question. I actually track my screen time. I try not to use my phone often. Funnily enough, this week it would be my Garmin app. I just bought a new Garmin watch and I'm very excited about it. And so spending way too much time on Garmin. The second probably would be I mean, all the social medias will be the same, but I definitely have to say I do spend some time on TikTok over the summer. Jamie McKenzie and I just send each other TikToks all the time, and I have to say that definitely see the appeal. It is a bit of a time sink. So
I'm not on the TikTok. I'm not
I'm
brave
sure your
enough yet.
students would know all about it. So
Oh, they do. They do.
yeah, there you
they
go.
they try to get me to do the dances and
I'm gonna
everything,
say you
and
might have been featured in some without even knowing it.
I
So
can see that happening too. All right, chips or cookies?
I'll go chips.
Which type? What's your brand?
Uh, no brand preference, but sour cream and green
Sounds
onion.
nice. That's a good
Yeah,
one. French fries or onion rings?
French fries.
French fries or poutine?
Uh, I'll go French fries. I think poutine I like is like a once in a while, but it's so thick you couldn't have it a couple times a week, I don't think.
All right, what's your favorite beer?
Favorite beer. There's I'm trying to think the for some reason I'm blanking. There's a brewery right around the corner from where my parents live now. My parents moved to New Westminster a couple years ago, so they live on the west coast. It's just kind of southeast of Vancouver. Um, and there's a hazy IPA at that brewery that's
Like a
incredible.
microbrewery?
Yeah, it's a microbrewery exactly. I'm Steel and Oak. I think Steel and Oak it's called. So it's a small kind of yeah, that's what it is. Steel and Oak. They've got a few. To be honest, I like anything that they have on tap, and it's walking distance from my parents, so it's a good little family outing that we like to have.
That's right. I like that. All right, what's a guilty pleasure, Ben?
Guilty pleasure.
A big one's been ice cream for a lot of the guys. It's been ice cream.
Ice cream.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna like I would probably say like the chips, like pizza and chips. Watch put on Sunday night football and order a pizza or something. I think that's definitely a guilty pleasure for sure.
Who's your football team?
Pittsburgh Steelers, 100%. I jumped on the bandwagon 2005 when I was 10 years old, watched my first Super Bowl. They won it, and I was hooked ever since. So we're off to a good start this year, and hopefully a few more in the future for us.
Yeah. I was in Pittsburgh a couple years ago with my oldest. We went down to watch a Leafs Penguins game and
Um,
went by the stadium. It's just amazing facility there, so it's pretty
it
cool.
is. I drove through Pittsburgh for the first time earlier in the year in March, and I was blown away. I'd never even paid any attention to what the city might look like. It was just like, oh, I like the football team, and to drive through, and yeah, they have the water there with the Heinz Field, and the baseball stadium's
Yeah,
right on the other side. It's actually is a pretty beautiful skyline and city. So I'll have to get down there for a game at some point.
yeah, it's really nice. I wore my Leafs jersey. My son's a Penguins fan, and
Yeah.
we were, meeting people on game day, and like, yeah, you guys from Canada, nice to meet, and like super
Oh,
friendly
nice.
and polite. It was really nice.
Oh, yeah.
All
Amazing.
right. Best place for a post-match beer.
Oh, I'd say the locker room, 100%, especially after a win.
That's fair. What series are you binge watching right now?
Uh, I the last one that I binged, to be honest, would have been a while, like the Jordan documentary. I've watched half of Social Dilemma. I think that's the new big craze on Netflix right now. So I've watched about half of it. So I have the other half to watch at some point this week. But I've been watching a lot more live sports just with everything that's been on, the NFL, the Stanley Cup, the NBA playoffs. It's a bit overwhelming. So I've been watching live sports over shows for a little while.
Yeah. It's been nice to watch for sure. And rugby going on with Super Rugby and the Premiership and stuff. It's nice to
Yeah,
have
that too.
games everywhere.
Exactly.
What's your favorite movie?
Favorite movie? It's Nightcrawler with Jake Gyllenhaal. It's I for some reason it seems more niche that no one's ever seen it, but uh, it's great. I've watched it. I'm not a big guy who likes watching movies multiple times, but I have to say I've watched it a number of times and I'm a big fan of it. So
Okay. All right. Who would play you in the Netflix movie of your life?
uh, I'll go. I'll pump my own tires, or so I'll say Daniel Craig or something like that.
Okay. Who would play the leading lady?
Oof.
Hang on a second. Hang on a second. Kingsley Jones chose Daniel Craig.
For himself.
Yeah. He said they look identical from the back of the head.
Well, what's funny is Kingsley likes to say he thinks we look alike, him and I, and that he passes my father. And actually, at a post game one day, someone was looking for my dad, and they went up to Kingsley and asked him if they knew my dad was somewhere at the post game, and Kingsley was there, and they went up and asked Kingsley if he was my father. So that probably aligns well. Then that's just going to feed into his narrative a little
That's
bit.
kind of funny. So, okay, who would play the leading lady?
I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I've got to be careful for my girlfriend, so I'll just say my girlfriend. She'll turn into an actress and play herself. I don't want to step on her toes here.
Connor Trainer wouldn't answer the question. Most guys are a little scared. They usually say their girlfriend or their wife. Few of
Okay.
them will actually say somebody else, but
Yeah.
I can respect that.
All right. There you go.
All right, what would the movie be called?
I've never thought about this.
Any Big Balls Part 1.
Yeah, let's go with that. It'll be a two-part documentary series.
There we go. All right, that's it for quick fire. Thanks for that. I've got a few questions left here for you, Ben.
Yeah.
Who had the biggest impact on you as a player? It's probably more than one person, but who stands out?
Yeah, I mean, if I look outside my family, like I think my dad coached me all the years, got me into rugby to begin with. I think probably most of the reason I pursued rugby and played rugby and enjoyed rugby to him. I think where I really saw a turning point in my career was, like I said, I showed up to university to focus on my academics and to play rugby on the side. And I got that first year, actually, I got invited to the Canada U20 camp. And the coaches that year were Graham Moffat, Mike Shelley. I knew Moff quite a bit just based on he's based in Alberta and had trained with him and he'd coached me previously. And I think that was the first year where we're playing for that team. I had no expectation to make that team. I made that team. And I think both of them really sat me down and said, hey, look, like, if this is something you focus on and you put energy towards, you actually could have a future in this sport. And I think that was the turning point where I went from just playing rugby passively because I enjoyed the game to starting to think seriously about it and wanting to make it my career. So I owe both of them quite a bit.
That's awesome. What are your thoughts on what makes a great team player?
I think probably what has to do with team players is ego, and you have to be someone who's selfless, willing to sit on the bench or not dress for a game if that's what's best for the team, but not pout in practice, still kind of go 100%, give it all, make your teammates better in practice. I think that's probably the more unheralded team players. There's the superstars on all the teams who do so well, but it's really those glue guys who keep a team together and plug those holes when someone goes down. They're the first ones up and still have positive attitude. And so I really think it's being able to like check your egos, stay humble. There's a kind of fine line between being ambitious and pushing for a spot while also not kind of stepping on other people's toes. And I think if you can walk that fine line, I think you're definitely an asset to the team, and you probably get selected to more teams based on that. If you're on the bubble, they'll take someone who has that disposition over someone who doesn't.
Yeah, I think you're right. What, just as an aside, when you broke your hand in Japan, what did you do to help with the team while after that happened?
Well, not a lot, to be honest. I finished the game, so um, it happened early in the game actually, and while I was trying to decide, I knew something was wrong with my hand. I was running around for another few minutes, and when the first whistle finally I went to go get it looked at by a physio, and they ran straight past me because Blevs was holding his jaw, and he'd broken his jaw. So I mean, like 10 minutes into their game, we were down our one center sub, and so I think all I could do at that point was just say, "Hey, I'll finish the game." So I finished the game, and then I was flown back to Vancouver 36 hours later, maybe, because I needed surgery to get the bone put back in place, and they figured the best call was to get it done in Canada. Uh, so yeah, I went back to Canada, had that operation, and then actually went back to Japan kind of 10 days later when got the green light because my family was over there. I had some friends and everyone went to visit. And so then was kind of just a spectator and was cheering the guys on as best as I could. So uh, definitely definitely wasn't a big help once the hand was broken, to be honest. So
I don't know. I mean, you just argued about people that do the unsung things, and I imagine by you going home and having surgery, and then I'm going to fly back as soon as I get the green light. I think that you earned a lot of respect from your teammates and from the coaching staff for doing that, because you could have just stayed home and kind of sulked about it, but instead you get you picked yourself back up and you flew back over and you cheered your mates on. And I think you probably earned a lot of respect from those veterans, the DTHs, and everybody else that were there with you. So I think that's don't sell yourself short. That's pretty impressive. That's hard to do, especially when you're younger and you're going through some turmoil. So well
for
done.
sure. No, I appreciate that. No, I definitely hope it. Yeah, I hope some people kind of viewed it as the right way, and I wouldn't have done it any differently. I was excited to be there, and was hoping the boys would do well, and was as bummed for them as if I was playing when that Namibia game got canceled, because I had all
Yeah,
the faith in the world that we would put on a good performance to kind of wrap up the World Cup there. So it's unfortunate.
yeah, I agree. As a rugby player, jump ahead 10 or 15 years. What do you want to be remembered for? What do you want your teammates at Toronto to say, or Team Canada to say about you after you retire?
Probably, to be honest, like probably that I was a team player, so to speak. I try to be an upbeat, energetic guy as best I can, and in the training environment, I try and kind of train at 100% just to push myself, but also to push the other guys around me. Um, and I'm kind of already accepted. I don't think I'm going to be the superstar or set the Canadian tries record or anything like that. And so I think for me, it'll definitely just be the guy who shows up in shape, who is willing to do whatever it takes for the team, and was a good teammate both on and off the field. I think off the field is important too, right? Someone you want to have that beer with, or on the off day you want to go spend that time with, go for a coffee, whatever it is. I think that's probably as important as on the field. So tick both those boxes. Hopefully, I'm sure. Uh, hopefully that's the case and not just me thinking that. So
I imagine it is. Last thing, Ben, any great rugby stories you can share with us? Feel free to throw somebody under the bus. It's entirely up to you. But do you have any stories you can share?
I mean, like like there's some incredible feel good stories just in terms of the relationships I've built through rugby. Play one or two games with someone, or I played Canada U20 with Sam Hayward, and him and his family opened up their doors. I went down to Australia, stayed with them for 2 weeks. His mom drove me around the country. So there's some incredible kind of relationships and people that you meet. In terms of kind of the rugby stories or the dirt that you're after, I'm sure uh, mindful that I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, and maybe those will come out later. But I will say some of the most fun that I've had and some of the best stories will come out of like so the wolf pack, right? Like that's the closest thing I guess that we have east versus west. And even then I definitely am, I guess I don't know if you can call it patriotic, but I'm patriotic towards the wolf pack, proud to be a prairie boy. And if I had it my way, we'd go back to that. I don't even want to play with the BC players. We'll stick with the prairie boys home and raised. But as I was up and coming, especially young, like 17, 18, 19, cracking into that team. There's some incredible veterans on that team. I'll miss a few, but there's Clay Panga, Nick Blevins was there, Mozak Sampson. There's a few. I'm missing Kyle Gilmore, Duncan McGuire, Adam Bontis. Like there's just this incredible James Buchanan list of just incredible guys, incredible players on the field, but even better guys off the pitch. And so they have the Rad Dudes Club, the RDC, that they take very seriously. And so I remember my first Wolfpack tour. It was, to be honest, I can't remember if it was the night before the game or if it was probably the night after the game. We would have played in BC, and it was after the game, and Panga and James Buchanan showed up in suit, ties, and gave us a pitch deck, a PowerPoint of for the RDC, and essentially they were trying to get everyone to buy a $20 membership, which would go towards beer, but they had all these slides which were trying to convince you that it was a good investment and your money would be worthwhile. And so that's kind of a snippet in terms of what kind of guys they were, and had some incredible amount of fun with all of them, and they still, I think a lot of them continue to give back to the rugby community even beyond sort of their playing days. So
I love the dedication there. That's, the suits and making a slideshow for it.
I wish everyone could have seen it. Was you wanted to throw $40 after them after they did such a good job selling the investment. There's no way you'd lose any money on it. So
that's great. Listen, Ben, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you had a busy day, just got back from training, so thanks for taking the time and chatting with us. And can't wait to see you suiting up with the Arrows. Good luck with the national camp, and can't wait also to see you with Team Canada. Hopefully, whenever some of those restrictions lift and we can get some international matches.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on, Jamie. Definitely enjoyed the chat, and appreciate everything you're doing to continue kind of getting eyes on Canadian rugby.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Ben. Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, beautiful. Thanks very much, Ben. That was a fun conversation. Thanks for taking the time to join us. Really appreciate you taking some time out of your day and having a good conversation with us about rugby. Definitely love to have you on in the future. I always love that when my guests are able to come back on and talk about where they've gone from one time to the next, or maybe doing a roundtable discussion. That stuff's always awesome. Got a few people coming up soon. Next 2 podcasts are lined up. We got Connor Braid, who I chatted with last week, and I chatted with Tyson Bukaboom last week as well. Kyle Bailey and I are still trying to mix out a date. He's down, I forget where he said he was, but he's playing in a 10s tourney. Same as Gordon McCrory. I'm chatting with him this coming Friday. That'll be an interesting one. Mackenzie Thomas, who I mentioned earlier on the pod, who's playing professionally over in England with the Sharks. She's going to come on, as well as Maria Gallo, Marissa Pace, Katie Sagler, Jonathan Kaplan, who is the referee-in-chief for the Major League Rugby now. He and I are trying to line up a date. And Harry Jones, the same thing. We're trying to get a date so that we can chat as well. The Zoom stuff is amazing, but with time zone differences and people back to work now that, COVID restrictions are lightened up, it makes it a little bit difficult for myself and guests to sometimes hook up on these calls. But it's still happening, and we'll keep bringing you these great stories, especially as long as you keep listening. And that's it right there. The listeners, thank you very much for listening every week or watching on YouTube. Keep spreading that word. Keep putting these messages out. Retweet them. Tag some friends in your tweets. Reshare them on Instagram. Reshare them on Facebook. just make sure more people are listening to these great stories, because the rugby players in Canada, both men and women, both sides, don't get the respect they deserve. So keep pumping these messages out so that everybody can hear the stories they've had, how they've got to where they're going, and let all Canadians and people around the world hear some fine stories about our great Canadian rugby players. As always, I got to say thanks to Ben Sound Music for supplying with us with our tunes. And as always, feel free to request topics for future podcasts, whether that's guests, whether it's questions for guests. Love to hear if you have something that you want to specifically ask about players. And I would definitely do my best to make sure that those questions get asked. But until next pod, which will be Connor Braid, I want you to remember, stay safe, stay healthy, stay sane, and most importantly, keep on rucking.